Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we are jumping into something pretty interesting, a piece of news that really highlights what's happening in finance right now. We've got an article focusing on BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF. You know, the one with the ticker IBIT?
Right, IBIT. It's been making waves.
Exactly. And our mission today is basically to unpack this huge milestone it just hit, figure out what it really means, for crypto, for traditional finance.
Yeah, and the core fact here is quite startling, actually. It's not just the size, it's the speed.
The speed, yeah, that's the hook.
Tells a really powerful story we should definitely get into.
Okay, let's do it. So the headline achievement, the big number the article points to, is IBIT surpassing $70 billion in assets under management, AUM.
70 billion,
Right.
which is, I mean, obviously a massive number in itself.
Huge.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's the timeline that's the real kicker here.
That's what's just, well, striking. The source says IBIT hit that 70 billion mark in just 341 days.
Wow. Okay, 341 days. And to give that some context, real jaw-dropping context, the article compares it to the old record holder for hitting $70 billion AUM.
Which was the big gold ETF, right, GLD.
Exactly. SPDR Gold Shares, GLD. The world's largest gold fund, essentially. And GLD took, get this, 1,691 days to reach that same mark.
Whoa. Okay, so nearly 1,700 days versus 341.
Yeah. So IBIT didn't just edge out the record.
No, it smashed it, like 5 times faster than the biggest gold ETF.
5 times faster. That's incredible.
And the article mentions the current AUM is actually a bit higher now, $71.9 billion.
Right, $71.9 billion. So what does that actually translate to in terms of, physical Bitcoin?
Well, looking at the holdings, the sources state IBIT currently holds 661,457 Bitcoin.
661,000 Bitcoin. That's a significant amount of the total Bitcoin out there.
It definitely is. And accumulating that much has pretty direct consequence, which the article points out.
Which is?
These holdings make BlackRock the world's largest institutional holder of Bitcoin. Bigger than major players you hear about constantly, like Binance, the exchange, or MicroStrategy, the company famous for its Bitcoin treasury.
Wow. Largest institutional holder. And they pulled this off in, less than a year?
Less than a year. It's worth remembering when this thing even launched for U.S. investors.
All right. It just started trading on NASDAQ.
Right.
When was it? January?
January 11th, 2024. Literally the day after the SEC gave the thumbs up for these spot Bitcoin ETFs.
So immediate demand then.
Oh, yeah. The article notes that on its very first day of trading, the volume went over $1 billion.
$1 billion on day one. Okay, that signals some serious pent-up interest.
Definitely. And it hasn't really slowed down that much. The money keeps coming in.
We're still seeing inflows.
Yep. The sources mentioned $201 million just in the first part of June.
And that's after a huge May, wasn't it?
Exactly. May was a record month, apparently. $5.9 billion in inflows into IBIT just in May.
Okay, so billions pouring in, record speed. It begs the question, why? Why is this happening now at this pace?
What's the driving force? What's BlackRock's take on it?
That's the key, right?
Yeah.
And according to the article, BlackRock's head of digital assets, a guy named Robert Mitchnick, he pins this success on a shift in perception.
How so?
He talks about Bitcoin's expanding use case, specifically its growing role as an inflation hedge.
Ah, the inflation hedge narrative.
Yeah.
And an alternative store of value, presumably.
And an alternative store of value, yeah. That's the framing they're using.
Interesting. So positioning it alongside assets like gold.
Which brings us back to that gold comparison.
Because the sources make another really important point here. IBIT hasn't just beaten GLD on speed to $70 billion AUM.
It's also beating it on inflows this year.
Exactly. It's actually outpaced GLD, the world's biggest gold fund, in net inflows since January. IBIT pulled in $6.96 billion net.
Wow. $6.96 billion net since January.
And get this, that inflow number makes IBIT the 6th-ranked ETF globally for inflows year-to-date.
6th among all ETFs, not just crypto.
Among all ETFs globally. That really shows the scale we're talking about here. It's not just a niche crypto thing anymore.
No kidding. Puts it right up there with the biggest funds across all asset classes.
It really does. And this sort of rapid institutional gobbling up of Bitcoin has got analysts talking, speculating.
About what?
Well, the article mentions Eric Balchunas. He's a Bloomberg ETF analyst. He's actually put out a projection, a potential timeline, for when BlackRock might even overtake the estimated Bitcoin holdings of Satoshi Nakamoto.
Hold on. Overtake Satoshi. The creator.
That's the speculation, yeah.
Hmm.
Based on the current trajectory, it just highlights the sheer scale of accumulation.
That's mind-boggling. What's the time frame he suggested for that?
He projected BlackRock could potentially hold more Bitcoin than Satoshi's estimated 1.1 million BTC sometime by the end of next summer.
End of next summer. So maybe just over a year from now?
Potentially, yeah. It's a projection, of course, but it shows the thinking.
And this whole phenomenon, it's not just a U.S. story, is it?
No, the article touches on a global aspect, too. Russia's main exchange, MOEX. They just launched futures contracts based on IBIT. That was on June 4th.
Futures on IBIT in Russia. Okay.
Though it's worth noting, access there is limited currently, just for accredited investors, sort of high net worth or sophisticated folks.
Right, okay. Still, it shows the global interest is there.
Absolutely. So if you sort of tie all these threads together, the record speed, the massive Bitcoin holdings, making them #1 institutionally, the huge continuing inflows, the inflation hedge narrative.
The analyst speculation about overtaking Satoshi.
And even the international derivatives.
Right.
It all points to this broader trend, right?
Which is?
Just growing global interest in crypto ETFs, increasing institutional comfort and exposure to Bitcoin. IBIT is clearly solidifying itself as a major force in this new landscape.
So let's bring it back to you, listening in. When you see this kind of speed, this unprecedented growth for a Bitcoin product like IBIT, 5 times faster than gold, what does that really tell you about where finance is heading right now?
How fast are the big institutions actually moving into digital assets?
And what does this level of demand really signal? Because it feels like a pace we just haven't seen before with, traditional asset classes.
The shift feels pretty undeniable at this point.
Okay, so just to quickly recap the main takeaways from this deep dive.
Let's do it.
First, IBIT hit $70 billion AUM in a record 341 days. That's 5 times faster than the big gold ETF, GLD.
Second, it holds over 661,000 Bitcoin now, making BlackRock the top institutional holder, ahead of names like Binance and MicroStrategy.
Third, the growth is fueled by massive inflows, including a record May, with BlackRock pointing to Bitcoin's increasing use as an inflation hedge and store of value.
Yep, and those inflows are significant enough to outpace even gold ETFs this year, ranking IBIT 6th among all ETFs globally.
And fourth, you have analysts speculating BlackRock could potentially hold more Bitcoin than Satoshi Nakamoto within maybe just over a year.
That really underscores the scale of institutional buy-in.
Right. So here's a final thought for you to maybe mull over.
Okay.
Given just how incredibly fast this institutional product, IBIT, which is directly tied to Bitcoin's price, has grown, and the sheer volume of Bitcoin it now controls, what are the potential knock-on effects?
What does it mean for Bitcoin itself, its price, its future?
Exactly. And maybe even more broadly, what does this massive embrace by traditional finance giants like BlackRock mean for the structure of the financial markets we've known?
Yeah, how does this change things going forward? The lines are definitely getting blurrier and faster than a lot of people probably expected.